Okay, good. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to first thank the organizers for allowing us to share a little of our results relating to energy security in the Southeast Europe area. What you see behind me is just a picture of Stonehenge. The subliminal message is that sometimes we should go back to the origins and start thinking different on the topics that we want to analyze. Now we are in a moment of really going to a totally different situation and flow of energies in the world due to the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian army. It's a moment of interesting developments, and we have to be very careful on what happens, and it's this moment that is actually opening the need for strategies that will actually take into account potential scenarios that were that seemed very remote up till now. Allow me to make a brief presentation of our speakers. I'm starting with Mr. Costis Stambolis, who is the Director General of and President of IENE, the Institute of Energy in Southeast Europe. And he has a remarkable activity in the field. And one of the things that IENE is famous for, it's becoming tradition right now, is an outlook of energy in the area. And we will hear probably more about all this from Director Stambolis. Umut Ergezer is a coordinator in the Council for Regional Cooperation of the Strategy of Security and Sustainable Development in Southeast Europe, and one of the experts with a very impressive experience in CEFTA and in various other organisms, and with a great capability of seeing sustainability in evolution. We will also have Professor Zgurovsky, the rector of the Kyiv University, who is actually excusing himself for probably not being able to join. He has sent a presentation made by a Zoom or by a YouTube movie, which the organizers have and will present in due time. Also, Professor Sanduleac from the Faculty of Energetics in the Politehnic of Bucharest is supposed to join us a little later. He is an expert in energy system security, grid security, and so on. I will only moderate today. Tomorrow at 9 I'm making a presentation on the same themes. And now allow me to start our session. Since Mr. Stambolis has taken time from an important meeting, I will also ask him to start this session and to make his presentation and comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Purica, for a very interesting introduction. I understand your support on this because we had, one of the results of the current meeting, of the current crisis, energy crisis, is that there is a high frequency of meetings at high level. I belong to a committee of the ministry, so I had to rush this morning, and I almost managed to miss this unique opportunity to be with you today and make a short presentation of our findings regarding energy security in Southeast Europe. So without further ado, I would like to go to the presentation, which I think will be useful. Right. Can you see the screen?
Excellent.
Yes. All right. So, as Professor Purica pointed out in his opening remarks, yes, we have managed over the last 10 years to bring out 3 issues of the Southeast Europe energy outlook. So last March, April, we published our latest survey outlook for 2021-2022, and we carried out a number of presentations. The main message of this outlook is that it provides us a global view of our region. And as you will see in a minute how we defined this region is the core countries and the peripheral countries. The scope is the critical assessment of the whole region. This is based on comprehensive data from all 15 countries that we follow, where it helps us understand the dynamics of energy flows in the region. We regard Southeast Europe as a country as a block of about 15 countries, which is West Balkans, East Turkey, and East Mediterranean, including Israel. And we have the peripheral countries. I'll show you this in a minute. So through this holistic approach, we managed to, we are trying to understand what is happening in terms of energy flows, energy dependency, cost, the impact on the cost and the prices, electricity, gas, oil prices. And of course, the various countries' plans, development plans, and objectives. And all that in the background of the major and overall objectives set by the European Union, which comes very often in our discussions and analysis. Data acquisition took place between 2018, 2021. Then we had analysis. We also had a very good cooperation with George Giannakidis and Rocco D'Emilio on the modeling of the demand and supply in the region. Hence, we have managed to have some projections up to the year 2040, 2050 of demand and supply situation in the region. And this helps us understand better what the challenges ahead of us are. And we complete the study with an analysis of the investment outlook. 29 contributors in all different fields and from all 15 countries of the region, backed by peer reviewers from several countries, including our esteemed friend, Professor Purica. So the outlook, as it is presented here, you'll see in a pictorial presentation of its contents, 16 chapters in all, covering all countries, but all sectors of energy, plus the demand supply scenarios and the investment outlook of the region. I will not attempt to go through the whole outlook because this will be tedious, but the presentation is going to be here, and it's an exhaustive presentation, so everybody will be able to refer to this, but I will just highlight the some of the important aspects of the study as I can see them. The raison d'etre, why we did a regional approach, because energy markets are becoming more and more interlinked, So therefore, to understand what's happening, we have to look in the broader geographical area. And here you see our core region. The blue one, the blue is the core region of the countries where we have gathered detailed information and we have carried analysis. And the peripheral countries, including Italy, Austria, North and Moldova, Ukraine, and Syria and Egypt in the south, are the countries with which there are energy interaction in terms of flows and in terms of investment and in terms of commercial activity. Therefore, this is the milieu where we have to place our search and try to seek answers. It's important to remind the three pillars of EU energy policy and indeed energy policy worldwide, which is based on competitiveness, security of supply, and sustainability. Following the Russia's incursion into Ukraine and the crisis which has erupted since, security of supply has been elevated as the top in this triangle. So security of supply, which for many years was the pillar of energy policy worldwide, as the oil crisis dissipated, and we had the economic crisis back in 2008, 2009, competitiveness and sustainability became top, and security of supply remained behind. Now we have a reversal of this situation with security of supply really becoming top priority. And you see here a depiction of the impact of the crisis as it has evolved since the start of since February this year, where the most obvious characteristic is the gradual lack of gas supply in Europe. And it happened in both ways. What I mean is that there was a unilateral decision by EU to start decoupling from Russian gas, and at the same time there was Russia was weaponized gas. Not just now; it started since the summer of 2021. We now see the results and gradual diminishing of supplies of gas in Europe, substituted by LNG imports. So we have a complete reversal of the energy balance as far as gas is concerned. But gas, although it covers something like 22% of energy needs in Europe, it has emerged as a strategic fuel because it's a pivot to the rest of the energy mix. And this comes out very clearly in the outlook when we talk about storage, when we talk about the differentiation of imports and the substitution of Russian supplies, partly through LNG and partly through increased flows from Norway, Algeria, and hopefully in the next 2 years from Azerbaijan. And we see here the impact in terms of volumes as we move along, and the gap that is going to result. We see here the impact on prices and the differentiation of prices between the USA, the Pacific Rim, and Europe. And we see here how Europe, the impact of the crisis resulted in Europe having the highest prices worldwide in gas. And of course, this affects electricity prices, as we all know. To start with, the outlook makes a very detailed analysis on the economic background of the region and of the various countries specifically. So I will not go in detail, but we'll see here how the GDPs of the various countries vary, how they were impacted in 2008-9 with the global economic crisis then, they started coming together. And then we have the big divergence again following the COVID crisis in 2020. And so the big dip in economic growth and demand resulted in an equally big hike in terms of demand following the gradual retreat of the COVID crisis, and then we're having a very high demand situation. The volumes of oil, gas, electricity consumed in Southeast Europe are not insignificant if put together compared to the overall demand and consumption of EU 27. It's something like, as you'll see here, 20 to 22%. So apart from the geopolitical importance of Southeast Europe, we also have very important volumes in terms of demand, oil, gas, and electricity. So, and this is something that we have to bear in mind. The energy mix, 73-2009, the global one, and we'll see the how little the energy mix has differentiated. We have a very big presence of fossil fuels in terms of coal, oil, natural gas. So very little impact in terms of alternative fuels, renewables, and others. And we see here how the energy mix in Southeast Europe is also changing, but it is changing more clearly in the sense that we have a bigger input of renewables and the use of gas replacing coal. But coal is still very important in the region, as you will see here. And we have the energy mix without Turkey, because it corresponds to about 50% of the region's energy mix. It's important to have a picture with Turkey and without Turkey. And here you see that there are differentiations if we take Turkey apart. So it's very important from a statistic point of view to understand this relationship. What are the key regional issues? Marked divergence between EU and Southeast Europe energy strategies. I mean, coal and lignite in particular is very important for many countries in the region, and it's not that easy to decarbonize. The easiest way to decarbonize is through substitution with natural gas, and of course renewables in the background, where they're going to come stronger and stronger into the mix, but they are not that easy to replace in the sense that we can use renewables for electricity, but not when it comes to the overall energy mix. And hence we have the security of energy supply becoming a very determining factor when we view the energy situation in the region, because we have lack of adequate electricity and gas interconnections. As I said, coal is paramount in the importance is paramount in the region, and therefore the region's path towards decarbonization is not that easy compared to other countries, for example, in Northern Europe. Nuclear remains a very viable option for Southeast Europe for power generation, and we see a number of countries, including Turkey, going ahead with nuclear, because this provides at the same time security of supply and is zero emissions. Therefore, it helps in the decarbonization. And of course, renewables growth is impeded on many occasions due to policy failures and electricity grid constraints. And we see here the dependency in terms of oil, in terms of gas. The region is blessed with a lot of oil and gas deposits and oil reserves, and a lot of research is going on in terms of oil and gas exploration, and this has to be taken into account. And for example, Turkey is one of the countries which is moving ahead in this direction, and its finding in 2020 of the major find in the Black Sea testifies to this. So oil and gas is important. Oil and gas is going to be with us for the next 20, 30 years. And countries which are actually involved in oil and gas exploration will have a benefit and an advantage in the energy transition period. And of course, we have the other countries in East Mediterranean, like Israel, Egypt, and Cyprus, and Greece, who are searching for oil and gas. So the region will be able to supplement imports with its own production, which is very important because this will help lessen its gas import dependency. Mr. Chairman, I could say a lot more things, but I'd like to go very quickly to the end of the presentation so we can be within the time constraints to show our findings in terms of the demand of the region. As I said, the presentations will be with you. Here you have an overall view of the gas pipelines and LNG facilities, both land-based and floating in the region, the new interconnectors, and how important role Turkey is playing in the transmission of gas from the Caspian to Europe through Greece, but also being able through the new interconnectors to supply extra gas in the region through IGB, which started operating 2 months ago, and the new Greece North Macedonian interconnector, which is in the planning stage and will become operational in 2 years. And of course, through Turkish Stream extension, through Bulgaria, Serbia, and going up to Hungary and Austria eventually. Growing importance of LNG, as I said. And let me go to the nuclear. As you said, the nuclear picture in the region is going to change with new additions, starting from Turkey, going up to Romania and Hungary. Here. Now, these are our findings as far as gross Indian consumption is concerned, looking ahead until 2040. And we see here we have split our analysis in 3. That is, one block is the EU member states, another block is the Balkans, the West Balkans, and then we have Turkey. So in order to understand how demand is going to shape over the next few years, we have to break this down for very practical purposes. So you see the EU member states, which include Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece. We have a very stable situation, or rather, we have slightly slower and lower demand as we go towards 2040, with small differentiations in the energy mix, the most important of which is the decarbonization. As you'll see here, coal, which is the black one, is diminishing as we go towards 2040, whereas with renewables is getting more and more of the slice of the energy mix as we go ahead. And gas is a constant here, a very important constant, because it helps guarantee, together with nuclear, very important base load. And then we go to the West Balkan countries, where their economies are differentiated from the rest, and we'll see how economic growth, which is going to continue over the next 15, 20 years, is impacting the demand of energy demand. And we see here how the energy mix is very much different from the EU states, because despite the decarbonization efforts, coal remains a constant, as you'll see here. And as more energy is used, this is provided through gas and renewables. But the important aspect, which was to try and decarbonize the region, is not achieved. Of course, this is a basic scenario. We didn't have the opportunity to organize two more scenarios. So this is the base scenario based on stated policies. And here we go to Turkey, where again, because of the very important and steady economic growth foreseen over the next few years, we see here the impact on demand. Demand is growing, but so do new sources like renewables and gas coming in. And again, we have the problem that despite the very consistent and very important efforts in Turkey to decarbonize, coal is still used to a very large extent. But if we go to 2040 and we see the percentage of coal to the rest, it is lower. Although it is increasing in abstract number, it is lower in terms of the energy mix. So in that sense, Turkey is very successful in trying to decarbonize its electricity mix. And this is the gross inland consumption. And we go to the final part, which is the investment outlook. And if we look how investment is shaping over the next few years in all countries, and we compare this with our earlier estimates in 2021 and 2017, we see very marked differences. So we have a total of about 437 billion euros potential investment from now until 2031 in the region. And here there's a split in the various sectors of the energy mix. Key messages: geography still plays an important role in the shaping of energy policies and energy trends. There is high oil and gas import dependence, and therefore a lot of effort over the next few years will be expanded in trying to control this, minimize this, or at least become less dependent by developing the region's own indigenous energy resources in all forms. Market liberalization has played a key role because this has impacted how prices are determined. Nuclear power is coming strong in the next few years. And of course, energy efficiency is going to have a very important role in lowering demand or lowering the supply, and therefore making more competitive the local energy sources. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop here because there are a lot more things I could say, but I think this brief overview of the findings of the study could be very useful in the debate which is now going on in the conference.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to find out where we are and where we would like to be in the energy systems of this region. It's very clear that we should devise new policies in terms of how we use and combine energy availability of various technologies in Southeast Europe. It could become one of the important regions, especially if countries will start cooperating. And cooperation means understanding and view to sustainability, understanding the possibility to go forward into a sustainable world, not only in terms of energy. So let's hear Mr. Umut Ergezer with what he thinks and what are the results of going forward within the framework of the United Nations Sustainability and Agenda 2030. Thank you, Professor Stambolis, for the incredible lesson that IENE is actually has prepared for today. And let's hear Mr. Ergezer.
Thank you, Mr. Purica, and it's very nice to see you again after we met in Iași in that very interesting conference which the Romanian government organized regarding the sustainable development. And thanks also, I would like to thank you for the organizers inviting me for this important symposium and allowing us to present the strategy called Southeast Europe 2030 Strategy, which I'm tasked to coordinate. So if you allow me, I'm going to share my screen to accompany my speech with a presentation showing some slides for a discussion with all the distinguished speakers, and if any questions come after, I would be happy to take. So I'm not planning to show all the slides, though it depends on the interest of other speakers and the audience. Definitely we can get back to the areas which attract attention and discussion. The strategy, today my speech will be much more on the holistic approach that we take within the Southeast Europe and the overall sustainable development goals, and the specific objectives and priorities of the strategy, which I believe that it can contribute to the discussion today on energy security in Southeast Europe. The strategy is very short. First, let me explain the geographic scope of Southeast Europe for the Regional Cooperation Council. Southeast Europe for Regional Cooperation Council includes 13 economies, which is actually including 5 EU member states, starting from Slovenia, Croatia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Romania. 6 Western Balkan economies, plus Turkey and Moldova. In this regard, Regional Cooperation Council is working under the political auspices of the Southeast Europe cooperation process, which is the highest level in regional cooperation in Southeast Europe. And in 2019, SECP, Southeast Europe Cooperation Process, economies, leaders, heads of governments and states agreed that the new strategy, which is now we are going to discuss with you, SEE2030 strategy, should be based on United Nations Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. Then thereafter, the RCC, and RCC's role is just to facilitate that strategy. First, of course, facilitating the preparation. So the strategy was adopted in 2021. And now we are in the very first and a half year of implementation. So the objective of the strategy definitely is to reach regionally sustainable economic growth within Southeast Europe by reducing poverty and inequalities, which unfortunately still is quite high in our region, improving social inclusion and decelerating depopulation through enhancing quality of life. So I will give to all of us now more population and people-oriented perspective, and how different parts of sustainable development goals are affecting our citizens' life. And I believe that in our discussion on energy security, we should also bring in this people-oriented views, because in any policy area, including energy security, is affecting our citizens' life directly, and any compartmentalized discussion, unfortunately, we are in the international relations and international organizations particularly are very much doing this compartmentalized discussion. So we are taking policies one by one, and then we are discussing with them within the margins of a single policy, but it affects all the policies, and the combinations are affecting our daily lives and people's life. In this regard, in this presentation, I will be mainly focusing on poverty and depopulation, how different determinants of our quality of life, including energy and environment, are affecting. Oh, during the preparation, we actually implemented very bottom-up approach. So we enter into the national SDG strategies of each 13, and then took up their priorities, discuss with them, agree with them, what are the cross-cutting priorities which could be adopted, accepted by them as the regional priorities, which may have regional logic for the regional level intervention. So having this bottom-up, nothing is top-down, then we want to create a regionally owned strategy and intervention, and to ensure relevance of that strategy. And as a short note, that strategy will be updated every 2 years. So this is not a text carved in the stone. So we want to have a flexible, action-oriented regional strategy to make all the 13 economies in Southeast Europe come up on their joint challenges. So there are 3 pillars, 13 priorities, more than 75 actions, ranging from trade to renewable energy and energy efficiency, and promoting its investment and R&D in these areas, enhancing capacity to reduce natural disaster risk, which is basically the region is very prone to confront with natural disaster risk, reducing digital divide, and enhancing public-private partnership and development financing. In the pillar regarding people, that human capital utilization, getting diaspora support, which unfortunately our region is very much immigrated oriented, improving access and quality of education, improving access and quality of health. And we will discuss how this energy composition and combination, which our countries are having, is affecting our quality of health, and the access to justice and clean environment and healthier households within safer and affordable environment. And the third pillar is allocated to smart implementation and sustainable funding and aid effectiveness, which is also very important, this SDGs financing and aid effectiveness, whether our donors are really reflecting our realities or not. And there are certain cross-cutting areas, but particularly poverty and inequalities is quite important. Green transformation is important, but from the depopulation, from the people-oriented perspective, particularly that strategy is trying to offer certain actions of solidarity between 13 economies. So the strategy itself prepared during the COVID environment. So if you read the strategy, which is a public document, which could be reachable in the website of RCC, that COVID and pandemic related risks are a little bit, let's say, emphasized. But now we actually have, unfortunately, new challenges in front of us. And as you know that now inflation, which is mainly triggered by natural gas price increases or energy price increases and food price increases, become our facts of life. And what we expect, if you look at the future commodity prices, particularly natural gas and food stuff, that this the pressure in inflation or inflation will not, at least is not expected to decrease in the upcoming period, at least next year. So we have to get ready to live under high inflationary pressures over our economies. But then we can discuss also during the session that whether our existing measurement indicators are really good ones. Because if you read the strategy, one of the key indicators of achievement is that the region wants collectively achieve on average 6% GDP growth. And when we look at the previous year, the region weighted average of GDP growth reached 9.1% because of the base year, the previous year during the COVID environment. But whether this GDP per capita or GDP growth is a good indicator to measure the realities of our lives or not, this is a question which we are asking to ourselves as well. Because with all the other indicators which we agreed in the strategy shows relatively good progress, but it may not maybe mismatch, it may not be matched with the real realities of our people's life. So I'm saying this, so the whole model of the strategy is based on or built upon inclusive growth, with different determinants of inclusive growth that includes definitely prosperity, but also people and or the quality of life determinants, and peace and partnership are actually contributing to the inclusive growth perspectives of our region in order to reduce poverty and inequalities and other. So just a short note for the strategy, we take into account high income countries' poverty rate rather than international poverty threshold. And when we apply this high income countries' poverty threshold, it becomes quite high. In some countries, population living below poverty and or at the risk of poverty reaches 45% of our population. So in this sense, let's say in quotation, relative poverty is quite high in our region. And we also checked how much that we are converging as Southeast Europe towards the Western European countries. And here in this graph, you may see on the green line is the average of the selected Western European economies like Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, because we take this sample as these countries are the ones who are receiving immigration from the region. And the blue line is the average of the Southeast Europe outperformance in terms of Human Development Index, which is the index for not only economic growth, but also quality of education and health and environment. And you see on the red line is actually the SE average of all the regions, not only the outperforming. So you see that there is, first of all, within country that outperformance and the national average, the divergence is increasing. But at the same time, outperformance difference between the national average of the Western European economies is not converging. And what we look at also the poverty and immigration within the Southeast Europe and within Europe, basically. And you may see on the left-hand side, here is, let's say, the poverty. And it's not a surprise, the south of and Southeast Europe, particularly Southeast Europe, but generally south of Europe, is actually having the higher population groups who are living at the risk of poverty or below poverty and at the risk of social exclusion. And when we overlap that map with the map of immigration, and on all those red colored regions, according to NUTS 2, is the ones who are sending their population out, the ones who are immigrating. We also look at, for example, whether our regions, according to NUTS 2, are really successful to catch up. For example, the least developed region of Germany in terms of Human Development Index figure of that region in Germany in 1990. And you may see that quite long time lag that we have. On the left-hand side, you see these, let's say, outperforming regions of each economy in Southeast Europe. And when they catch the 1990 Human Development Index figure of that German Mecklenburg and Vorpommern region of Germany. And on the right-hand side, you may see that in 1990 figure of this region in Germany, whether it can be catched by the national averages of each SEE participant. And you can see neither Bosnia, nor Kosovo, or Moldova, nor Skopje still could, or North Macedonia could catch the 1990 level of the least developed region of Germany. In terms of demographic trends, unfortunately, our population is decreasing. In total of 13 economies now is 150 million people, but in 80 years, we will at least 20% less. But at the same time, while we are emigrating, not also for immigration, but also with the natural negative fertility rates, our population is decreasing, but our age dependency, basically elderly people dependence on working age population is increasing. Today is 28%, and it will be jumping to 68% in 80 years. So we look at, this is only Western Balkan 6 only figures, I mean, these two tables. We look at also the immigration intentions. But we have also figures for Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, but it's basically for the Western Balkans because it's better to call it as immigration, not as mobility. And then what we see is that 61% of economically active population in Western Balkans, if they can be categorized as people who are younger than 54 or between 18 and 54, 61% of this WB6 population, economically active, wants to leave the region and wants to work abroad and live abroad. But when we look at which parts of their life that they are happy and satisfied and not satisfied, and what we see that only 12% of our population in Western Balkans is satisfied with the level of prices. Then only 15% are only satisfied with the job opportunities, but 25% also, for example, is satisfied with the health, and the remaining are not, 75%. This is a quite high figure. And we also calculated, I calculated the average statistical, the value of statistical life, average value of statistical life. So what is the monetary value of one person's life in Southeast Europe and different countries? And in EU destination countries, here is that is categorized as Germany, Italy, and Austria. And what we see that average person's life in these three countries, Germany, Austria, and Italy, is around 7.7 million euro of all life, the whole life spectrum. And in Southeast Europe, average is 1.8 million. So we are relatively, monetary wise, our average cost value of life is much lower than the Western European life. But then if I actually, let's say, put them into the calculation that how much it may cost that immigration from Southeast Europe towards those countries, to the EU particularly, this immigration between Western Balkan 6 plus Turkey and Moldova to the Western European may cost between 158 to 250 billion US dollars in 10 years time, between 2013 and 2022. Also, I may say that if we look at the average life expectancy of SE13, which is the combination of bad air quality to poverty, bad health services, low transport connectivity, it's really a combination of all our life determinants affecting our expected life in Southeast Europe. And I can say that we are living 5 years on average shorter than the EU average. So we live 5 years shorter. And if we increase our lives 5 years, our expected contribution to the gross national income will be around 12%. But what we see is that whether the donors are contributing to these sectors, because particularly Western Balkans is in the Southeast Europe, one of the second top recipient of the official development assistance in the world per capita. And then the sectors which we are receiving the official development assistance, the first sector is banking and financial services. The second one is the humanitarian aid because of the refugees in Turkey, but the third one is transport and storage, and the fourth one is government and civil society. So we have to see also whether the banks and financial services, because what we are discussing today is energy security and huge amount of investment. And this investment, I mean, we have to check whether our banking and financial markets are capable of to orientate this type of investments in the right sectors or not. And what we see is that, particularly in the WB6, the financial markets depth is very shallow. This is the line which you see is the financial market depth in the Western Balkans and Moldova, this green line. And then on this is what you see is the financial institutions depth is the red line in the Western Balkans and Moldova. When you look at the financial development index in total, only Greece and Turkey actually have relatively more advanced financial markets and financial development index, which is closer to the EU average. In some cases, Turkey or Greece actually are above, but the others are not in the average of Europe. But even these two countries definitely having much lower financial development index compared to the advanced economies. So we have to discuss also in the energy security how these investments, I mean, they could be orientated by the financial markets, whether we have enough maturity in the financial markets or not. And in addition, that question of that, how our people would be affected, whether this energy transformation will be affecting their poverty and social inclusion, whether it would be triggering their immigration trends or not. Because we know that the population or the people's life are normally expected in economics as the outcome of the function. But what we see, particularly in Southeast Europe, the population trends will be the factor of our economic growth, because in some countries, there will not be enough people living in their countries to make their state structures functionable. And in some countries, such aging percentages will be totally disturbed. And then the financial sustainability of their, for example, social security systems will be at stake. And then we have to take into account the socioeconomic structures when we are discussing economic growth and also the energy security. So what we see is that we need to really discuss how we are going to finance this energy transformation transition. I mean, how much money is to be allocated from national budgets, how much money that we can attract from the development financing and private finance investments, but also how much money and which sectors that the official development assistance donors and foreign aids are channeled to these areas, and whether really they are targeting in the correct areas or not. So in the end, regional ownership is important, which is built upon basically the regional cooperation and cooperation between governments, solidarity between the economies in Southeast Europe, which I think could be built upon from this bottom-up approach. And the measurement and monitoring should be really people-oriented. I mean, it should be relevant to our lives. And ownership, I think with all these previous bullet points, which I showed to you in these conclusions, regional ownership, solidarity, and relevant measurement and monitoring, then could be spilled over to the aid effectiveness, which could be more SDG responsive and to support to enhancing also national budget and private investment and responsiveness to the SDGs. So, Professor Purica, this ends my presentation, and thanks for your attention and all the speakers, and I will be here to receive any questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot. It's been a real pleasure to put energy into the framework of all sustainable development. And I always thought that when we speak about food, it's also energy. Every person normally should have 2,700 kilocalories of food per day. So if we talk in these terms, then energy is not only a question of power or heat or things like that, but also or gas or vectors of the oil type and petroleum products. But it's a question of looking at the world in a systematic way. Thank you a lot. Since we are now having Mihai Sanduleac with us, let him continue, and at the end there will be another 20 minutes at the end, or 25 minutes. We will have the Zoom presentation by Professor Zgurovsky, the rector of the Kyiv Politehnic. So, Professor Sanduleac, floor is yours. You should put your microphone on. It would be a better idea. We can't read lips.
Correct. Thank you very much. I try to share screen. Is it seen, my screen in this moment? It works, yes? Okay. So first, thank you very much for inviting me to this energy symposium. Moreover, I saw very interesting presentations which have, let's say, an overall view at high level about things related to security and resilience in the current future challenges of energy security. And my presentation, which is also with Professor Horia Necula, who could not come, unfortunately, to this meeting, it's, let's say, more restricted to some aspects, but I hope that they will give a little bit of salt as well related to discussions. So the presentation is about security and resilience in the energy sector. It was initially about energy sector in Romania, but I felt ideas were, let's say, more general, so they can be, let's say, not specifically related to Romania, but they can be more general. And when speaking about energy resilience, which is the main topic in this presentation, which I have now, it's that this energy resilience has at least two categories to be exemplified for electricity domain, because we can speak as well about energy resilience on other fluxes of energy. But I am specifically focusing on electricity. I am also an electrician, so this I know a little bit better. So we have one category is the resilience of the main power system, or so-called public electrical network. This is a system which traditionally has bulk production of energy, which means big power plants. Either they are nuclear, or they are classical, or they are also wind or solar, but they are bulk production. So they have big nominal power. Then we have the transport and system operation. the TSO, which are two activities. In most of the countries, they are together in the same company, but there are some others which have the responsibility split in two different companies. And then we have the distribution of electrical energy. And when we speak about resilience, we have to look on all these aspects, because all the segments of the chain need to be operational in order to be resilient. Because finally, the scope of this resilience is to deliver energy to the end customer, end user, and it is needed that all of them are working. An advantage of this public main power system is that it is eased, this resilience, by the meshed network, which allows rerouting of energy flux to maintain energy supply. So if something is happening in a zone, you can, in most of the situation, also based on analysis about the maximum power to be transported and so on, you can usually change a little bit the network configuration, the topology, and then you may re-establish the power supply to the distribution electrical energy, and then from distribution to the end user. Another idea, sorry, about this, I went back, is that if this advantage of mesh networks works well at high voltage and also at medium voltage, it is possible. Usually at low voltage, where are the end customers, most of them, not industry, but traditional end customers, the users, the citizens, here we usually do not have any meshed network. So we have only one channel to provide energy. And then here, resilience, it's a little bit more difficult to be made from the perspective of the grid. Then it comes, the other category is the resilience of the end user. It is considered that usually this is somehow solved if the resilience of the public network is solved. However, there may be some situation when this does not happen anymore. This resilience of the end user, it's a little bit an emergent type of resilience. It's practically the resilience of energy entities of the future, like energy communities or like prosumers, which are the ex-consumers, which now have also additional features like local production and storage. These ones, the energy communities and prosumers, they combine production, distribution, and consumption of the entity. So it's like a small system which has everything, but it is on a very small area. And in addition, it has the exchange of power with a public network in the point of common coupling in order to obtain or to export the energy from the entity. Examples of such new entities, energy entities, are smart districts, smart cities, renewable energy source cooperatives, and so on. So all these entities which need energy, which usually do not have as main scope of their work to produce energy, but when they do it, they have different advantages compared with the situation when they rely only on the public network. But are there needed measures for both categories, meaning before the PCC and after the PCC, the point of common coupling? And when the public network goes in trouble, and this can happen when it may be not able to ensure resilience to the final customer, we have the so-called blackouts. And these blackouts are already discussed in policy of many people. So some are training the society for this kind of situation. So it is something which is, let's say, now very hot, and it is public. And there are several possible situations with an open list, of course. You may have extreme meteorological situations, and maybe one of the most clear situation is a Maria hurricane, which deteriorated nearly entirely the power system on this island 5 years ago in Puerto Rico, in the island of Puerto Rico. And with huge efforts, something like $10 billion or something like that, it has been mostly restored. And only, I think, 1.6 or something like this billions in microgrids. And then it came another hurricane, which produced, again, huge network problems. So this kind of extreme meteorological situation, maybe initially they are only in islands in the oceans, like it's Puerto Rico, or in places where there are usually hurricanes. However, we see more severe meteorological situations also in countries which are not islands in the middle of the ocean. So this can be one situation when we can have blackouts because this full chain, which was discussed in one of the first slides, does not work anymore because it is somewhere happened something. Then another situation, which maybe in the even a near past, it was not thought that it might be possible. It's the possibility to have lack of adequacy, meaning that we do not have always enough power plants to order to give the necessary power for the necessary consumption. And if we don't have it, maybe some of the energy will come from the tie lines, from the exchange with other countries, but sometimes even these ones do not have the necessary capacity to do it. So this may be another possible situation when blackouts, at least in some areas, in order to have the balance between the possible production and the need to be equalized, this can happen as well. And of course, we have worse situations, which also we didn't thought maybe 1 year ago, and we have new lessons from reality. I mean, for instance, Ukraine, the newest one, showing how exposed is the power system and how it is possible from a fully functional system to go to a complete or near complete blackout, and to have very few things to be done in order to restore it, or to restore it in quick time. So there are needed measures in both sides of the BCC, so from the both categories. And in case that the resilience of the public grid is overwhelmed by the facto situation, it is needed a certain resilience at the end user level, so on the other side of the PCC. And this is what I will try a little bit to discuss in the next minutes and the next slides, and this will be all. Resilience after the PCC is already used by entities with critical activity, such as hospitals, armed bases, and even, for instance, national dispatch centers or regional dispatch centers. If there is something on the public network, they can rely for some hours or maybe more of power supply based on what they prepared in order to be resilient. The resilience of the final user is, however, not yet sufficiently considered in other activities and is near non-existing at the final user. So in most of the situations, we hear about resilience of the network, which is needed. And there are in so many situations spoken about that I will consider that this will be anyhow solved. So I will try to give more insights regarding the resilience after the PCC, so at the end user. And who needs resilience in city? The one which you want to see that they become smart cities. And there are some regions of activity which are subject of resilience and which unfortunately are not yet as well enough considered, but they should be in the future. It's about this essential electricity supply in smart communities, smart cities as well. And between them, there is a water supply, because the water network needs electricity for pumps and also for its automation. But this is the one which consumes more. So that's why when we have a prolonged network problem, after some time, we have also a water problem, because water cannot come to us, even if the network for the water, so the water network is not damaged. But because it lacks electricity in order to work properly, it looks like being damaged as well. Then is public lighting, which needs a minimal level of security of people in the night. Activities related to public order, not only police, but which should work also as it is needed, but also lights, street lights, in order to still have an acceptable order on the streets for the vehicles. Then we have activities related to healthcare, like hospitals, which usually have already considered this, but there are also others which are needed, like pharmacies and so on. Then there are activities related to bank transactions, also very important. So today we have more or less, even if you don't have electronic money, we have the cards which in somehow the money from the bank is used electronically for the payments. And it is very important that if this happens, POS and other equipment which can still allow electronic payments and other transactions needs to work before many other things, before many other activities. And of course, other sensitive situations which need to be analyzed, and the list is open. Also, they should be candidates for looking into local resilience of these entities or of these activities. To be noted that essential loads need also to be efficient, as in many such cases, we may rely heavily on storage means, which are limited. So we need to have efficient loads in order to use the energy from the storage means, like batteries, as much as possible. At the final user, there are also some elements which are eligible for being resilient. It's like, and here it's a list. Again, it's not a full list, but at least some of the most important and essential loads in a house which may need resilience. It's again lighting, minimal lighting to be able to continue your activity. Then very important is the fridge or the freezer, which keep the food unaltered, because finally we also need food, of course, and it has to be in good conditions. Then communication devices, computer, internet access, in order to be able to do things or to be to have information about what happens, in order to know how to adapt. And there are maybe other examples, but this, let's say, that are like minimal things. Again, here as well, and essential loads need to be energy efficient, because also storage is one of the main parts of for implementing energy resilience at the final user. And a good solution is also to have as much as possible prosumers, because even if we have storage, electricity storage, and can be also heat storage, but I'm more focused on the electricity. If there is storage in the batteries, you still need to be able to be resilient more time. And then prosumers, which have also local production, can improve this time of resilience. So we look for prosumers which can produce local green energy, not only because we want to have more and more green energy, but also because it is increasing resilience. However, the standard solution for the local green energy is based on rooftop solar panels. But after that, or other places for the solar panels. But after that, we need the inverters, and the inverters are needed for providing the energy in the grid, in the local grid of the prosumer and in the general grid. And the standard solution is based on so-called on-grid inverters. Most of the prosumers use today this solution, which is also cheaper, the cheaper solution. And this kind of on-grid inverters, they work as grid follower, this is the name, which means that they do not work at all in case of power outage of the public grid. They need that somebody is giving them the frequency and the voltage, and then they can work. But if there is no frequency, no voltage in the grid because the power network is down, they don't work as well, so they are not resilient solutions. This is maybe something which I thought that it is not enough known, or it is not enough in awareness that we may have a very good production of energy. But if we have an on-grid inverter, when outage is coming, we cannot use it at all. Simply, we cannot use it at all. It's even not about changing, let's say, a switch. It's about the principle of these on-grid inverters, which work only if the main power exists. Which are the resilient solutions for this prosumer which want as well to be resilient? There are practically two solutions, the off-grid inverters, which are for off-grid networks. They need storage as well, like lithium batteries, which is expensive. However, they act as so-called grid formers in the prosumer or energy community island, so they can work when they work like this because this is the business as usual for them. And the biggest challenge is for this, there are big challenges for off-grid inverters, so it's not very simple, but it is resilient, and this starts to be more and more important, is that there are big challenges, and one of them, maybe the biggest one, is that it needs to provide all time, meaning 24 hours, 7 days a week, the balance between production and consumption. So it's a sort of adequacy of the microgrid. And this is really a big challenge because it is not so easy to do that. Then it comes, the second one is the hybrid inverters, you know, like it is in the cars. If we are afraid about the fact that we don't have enough kilometers of free traveling without recharging, we use hybrid cars. There is a sort of hybrid something also here, and these are the hybrid inverters. They can work both on grid and off grid, meaning that they can operate as grid former when it is necessary and as grid follower when it is connected to the grid. They are, of course, more expensive, as microgrids have also more expensive functionalities, and they need as well storage. So here, of course, if we speak only about money, we may never look for these solutions. We can go to the previous one, the on-grid inverters, which are still the most used. But in the context of today's situation, when there is at least a possibility that such blackouts or temporary lack of supply may occur, then this becomes also more and more interesting. And it's not only because it's now more interesting. If we look in the standards of related to smart cities, we see here as well that resilience is very important. So resilience is an is a value which starts to be more and more important, and eventually it can pay this additional cost for off-grid inverters or hybrid inverters, which maybe are the best one. I think this is the last one. Yes, it's the last one. So how to implement these things? There are needed policies to promote resilience as an important new value. This is maybe the message of my entire presentation, which means to improve the support for distributed renewables, especially solar-based electricity, including agrovoltaic, agrophotovoltaic, agro-PV, which is a subject by itself. Why especially solar and not solar and wind? Because wind is very good, but it's only in some places where wind blows well. However, solar in most of the regions of Europe and let's say under 50 degrees latitude, it is for sure better and better the more we go towards the Mediterranean area. We can have solar-based electricity practically everywhere. So this is a main difference of the solar electricity compared with wind-based electricity, that it can be distributed nearly everywhere. Then the second one is to improve the support for investment in energy storage, especially related to new, especially based on the new generation of energy storage, because here we have very good developments, and the future looks bright, and to be combined with renewable solutions for resilience, promoting resilient microgrids. Again, very important. This takes time. So when we have already a big problem like we have in Ukraine in this moment, such kind of problems to be solved through microgrids, through elements of resilience, they need policies a lot of time before, maybe 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years before, in order that in some places the most important activities can become resilient. And of course, energy communities should be as well promoted, and holistic solutions to integrate the electrifications of the transport, like light vehicles as the first steps for the electromobility, and heating with heat pumps or of different times. It's also a very good solution, because if we have still some dependency regarding the gas, or sometime we may not have enough gas to use, then heating with heat pumps is also a very good solution. And here the technology went well in the last period, and it looks that they are really good alternatives against heating with gas. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking for any discussions on the subjects which I presented. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Professor Sanduleac. It's been a most rewarding presentation on resilience in times of peace. Our final speaker that will actually enter on a Zoom, on a YouTube movie due to a certain situation with the Ukrainian energy system, is Professor Zgurovsky, the rector of Kyiv Technical University. Kindly launch the professor's.
Grande.
Dear participants of the conference, please forgive me for contacting you via a recorded video. Due to constant missile strikes on Ukraine, the operation of country's power grids is extremely unstable now. Full-scale invasion of Ukraine and energy blackmail of the countries of Europe radically changed the energy balances in the world and put it before a new energy crisis. This challenge requires the countries of Europe to significantly restructure the energy production and consumption system to achieve their own stability. A country's energy independence is a fundamental component of its sovereignty. It determines the independence of one country from the energy resources of others. The European Union imports 90% of consumed gas, about 25% of oil and oil products, and 45% of coal. Until recently, the share of the Russian Federation in this import was an average of 45–50%. A sharp aggravation of the energy crisis in Europe began in early 2021 during a heated dispute over the commissioning of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. With the beginning of the war in Ukraine, there was a sharp jump in energy prices. This increase culminated on March 7, when gas prices exceeded $3,800 per 1,000 cubic meters due to Russian threats to cut off gas supply to Europe as a counter-sanction. In 2022, of Russian fuels to EU countries fell by 300 terawatt hours, or by about 22%. Some countries such as Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania refused to buy Russian gas. Other countries have significantly reduced their fossil fuel imports. This summer, Russia shut off gas to Poland, Bulgaria, Finland, Denmark, and the Netherlands because they refused to pay their bills in Russian currency and cut supply to 6 more countries. Energy resources have become an important geopolitical factor of Russia's influence on other countries. The oil and gas sector brings Russia half of its budget and accounts for more than half of export. This year, Russia's income grew 3 times from export to EU thanks to exceptionally high prices for energy resources. The EU pays an average of 950 million euros per day for oil and natural gas. For 9 months of the war, the EU paid Russia more than 225 billion euros for oil and gas. This money almost completely compensated for the impact of Western sanctions on Russia. As a result, the European Union began to develop several plans to eliminate dependence on Russian fossil fuels. These are Fit 55 program, Repower EU, a 10-point plan to reduce the EU's dependence on Russian natural gas, the plan Save Gas for a Safe Winter. According to the above-mentioned plans and programs, by the end of 2022, it's expected to reduce EU demand for Russian gas by 100 billion cubic meters, or 2/3 of the total. This program provides the implementation of 3 main directions. The first direction is to save energy and reduce demand by at least 15% compared to the consumption of previous year. The second direction is the diversification of energy supplies and the attraction of more renewable gas sources. The third direction is accelerating the transition to clean energy. As for the first direction, energy efficiency and reduction of energy consumption, this is the most realistic measure in the short term. With alternative supply options now running out, the only way to avoid an energy shortage in the EU this winter is to reduce consumption. The implementation of the plan according to the second direction on diversifying fuel supplies and attracting renewable gas sources is designed for 5 years. The energy crisis of 2021 exposed problems in European energy system, such as limited gas transportation capacity, unsuitable geographical location, or insufficient length of gas pipelines, the lack of LNG terminals and seaports in some countries, and the inability of the current level of renewable energy to meet energy needs. In the context of the third direction, we know that more than 20% of energy the EU is currently produced by renewable energy sources and 50% by nuclear reactors. The European Commission proposed to increase the share of electricity from renewable sources to 45 by 2030. At the same time, the planned construction of 14 new nuclear reactors in Europe, in particular in France, will not increase the share of electricity produced by nuclear energy in connection with the gradual decommissioning of existing reactors, the technical resources which is exhausted. This share will remain at the level of 50% in 2035-2050. To reduce Russia's cost for the war with Ukraine, on November 5, 2022, the EU countries, G7 and Australia imposed 2 new oil sanctions against Russia. First, they set an upper limit on the price of oil at $60 per barrel. This sanction requires the control of hundreds of financial transactions of many companies. It's not hard to get around it, so the sanction will show its effectiveness in a few months. Second, EU countries have imposed an embargo on the sea transportation of crude oil. This is 70% of Russian oil exports. It's extremely effective action. The reorientation of oil exports from the European market to the markets of Asia, mainly to India and China, will lead to an increase in the cost of transportation by $10–15 per barrel. This will result in direct losses to the Russian budget of about $100 million a day or $46 billion a year. At Zgurovsky Kyiv Politehnic Institute, we are also engaged in researching energy development strategies on the European continent and globally, based on application of intelligent data mining and system analysis. To evaluate and compare the energy system of different countries of the world, our scientists have developed the Energy Freedom Index, which summarizes 3 sub-indexes: the Energy Potential Sub-Index, the Energy Balance Sub-Index, and the Energy Development Sub-Index. The study covered the period 2000–2021 for 142 countries of the world. Here are the results of the evaluation of the EU countries and Ukraine. According to 2021 data, Ukraine has the highest Energy Freedom Index and Romania completed the top 10 countries. Also, the correlation between this index and the share of imports from Russia in the national consumption of each country was analyzed. As we can see, countries with a higher value of Energy Freedom Index have a weak or negative correlation with Russian import. This slide presents the grouping of countries by the level of dependence of the Energy Freedom Index on Russian fossil fuel imports. There are 4 different groups of countries. We see that Poland, Estonia, Denmark, Romania, the Netherlands, Czech Republic, Cyprus, and Spain are characterized by a high and medium inverse relationship between the Energy Freedom Index and the share of Russian fossil fuel imports. The next study considers the risk of refusing from import energy resources. The grouping of countries in a 2-dimensional field of parameters, the Energy Freedom Index and the share of Russian fuel imports in the structure of total consumption made it possible to divide countries into 3 groups by risk level. In the high risk zone were countries whose index is below average and which have more than half of Russian energy resources in the structure of total consumption. Greece, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Slovakia, Hungary. In the medium risk zone, who are countries whose index is below average, but which have less than half of Russian energy resources in the structure of total consumption. Austria, Belgium, Estonia, Ireland, Spain, Italy, Cyprus, Luxembourg, Malta, Germany, Portugal, Croatia. In the low risk zone, who are countries whose index is above average and which have less than half of Russian energy resources in the structure of total consumption. Bulgaria, Denmark, Latvia, Poland, Romania, Slovenia, France, Czech Republic, Sweden. EU countries can be divided into 4 groups depending on their willingness to replace Russian fossil fuels and impose an embargo. Group 1, countries that were threatened with the greatest losses in the economy by the rejection of Russian fuel resources and which needed assistance from other EU countries, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. Group 2 countries that are highly dependent on fuel imports from Russia and had certain discussion about the embargo, the Netherlands, Austria, Germany, Romania, France. Group 3, countries that had a significant or moderate dependence on fuel imports from Russia, but supported the embargo, Lithuania, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Italy, Finland, Poland. Group 4, countries that had a low dependence on fuel imports from Russia and unconditionally supported the embargo, Greece, Estonia, Ireland, Spain, Cyprus, Luxembourg, Malta, Portugal, Slovenia, Denmark, Latvia, Norway. Naturally, the decision of each country largely depends on its political interest and the expectation of the population. And the last, the coming winter poses a serious challenge to the EU countries due to a sharp energy shortage, rising prices for essential goods, economic recession, and war awareness. An easy way for the EU countries is to quickly end the war on the expense of Ukraine losing part of its territory and sovereignty. We believe that such a path will only delay an even more destructive war for Europe. Therefore, we believe that Ukraine, together with the EU countries, will adequately overcome this challenge for the sake of Europe's democratic future. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Purica, can you unmute yourself, please, because we cannot hear you.
Sorry. Yes, sorry. We are now at the end of this special session, and we've had incredible presentations. I have to say, Mr. Stambolis had got to go. He just got out of an important meeting with his minister. It's a moment for, since we are only 1 minute to end of the session, maybe one question from the audience, if there is any. If not, I would recommend questions to the organizers, and they will take care of sending them to the speakers and receiving the answers and so on, sharing with the audience. Allow me at the end to say something in Italian. Io sono stato un ex ENEA ricercatore internazionale tramite il centro fisico di Trieste e ho lavorato in centro ricerca energia della Casaccia e nella sede dell'ENEA. C'è stato sempre un piacere ricordare i momenti dell'Italia veramente di 30 anni fa comunque, ma anche un piacere di essere in contatto anche come presidente dell'Associazione Rumena dei economisti per energia ed economia si chiama in Romania, di essere in contatto e partecipare a queste sessioni, a queste conferenze dell'Associazione Italiana, che hanno già una tradizione e sono molto importanti. Grazie ancora all'Università Bocconi per ospitare elettronicamente questo genere di attività. So, ladies and gentlemen, having thanked in Italian to our Italian organizers, allow me to thank the panelists and the speakers, and to wish Rector Zgurovsky as soon as possible the capability to join electronically this type of discussions. Thank you again. Thank you, organizers, and the session is finalized. I'm glad we are in time. All the best, and we'll keep in touch. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you from our side as well. Bye-bye.